Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. There's a lot to explain, so I'll keep this short. Ignited Software made Repleh County Archives 2, and today we're going to be uncovering the story in it. So this is the story explained. RCA2, which is how I'll be referring to this game from now on, begins with a cutscene of our character approaching the Repleh County Sheriff's Office in the morning. The day is July 13th of 2003, the same day as the original RCA game takes place. Going in it seems to be a relatively slow day in the office, with not much going on in the county. We hear and see some Easter eggs of various people who worked on the game, and James, the community manager of Ignited, who is also here, and I was able to play with him on the lobby, so shout out to him. Anyway, we have to get debriefed and later put our sheriff's uniform and camera, which we notice that upon putting our camera and uniform on, the camera is an Axiom body cam. Keep that in mind. After that, we're instructed to go to our police cruiser and start our police shift monitoring Highway 951. During this, we stop two people on the highway. The first is a man who runs a diner, who mentions seeing something in the woods, some form of deer man, but believes it's Jenkins. The diner he mentions after, though, in one of his dialogues, is of some canonical importance, which we'll get into later. After talking with the man and not giving him anything, we let him off with a warning. We have another encounter with someone, this time a man named Wyatt Jenkins. He's very blunt with his responses, responding with yes and no, or in some cases, pure silence. When asking for his documents, we find out that 1, the document is blanked out, and 2, that he's had a previous violation for disturbing the peace. After being given that news by the dispatchers, we opt to let him go with a warning. And with that, he leaves. After our hard day's work, we go back to the office to file the reports. Unlike in the morning, it's empty, and we're the only ones there. Upon filling out the reports, we are told over the dispatch to do a welfare check on the Jenkins resident, who was the same man we had stopped not too long ago. We have a loading screen which informs us that it is no longer the 13th, but 12 a.m. on the 14th. A fallen tree trunk is blocking our path, and in our typical video game logic, we leave our car to investigate on foot, which is never a good sign. We call the dispatcher and tell us to put us in the map for the welfare check, and after walking towards the residence, we see Wyatt Jenkins' truck on fire, with him still inside it. We call the dispatch again and tell them to call the fire department to alleviate the flames. Afterwards, we try knocking on the door to the Jenkins residence, but we get no response. After that, we tell dispatch that we're going to have to bust down the door and to call medical services. Dispatch, however, does not respond. After busting down the door, we find the whole house is riddled with scribbles everywhere from "they're watching me" to the Empyrean logo being placed all over the house. The house is messy and unkempt. We go through all the rooms, even a safe room, before we enter the final one. It has Old Man Jenkins's room, where in the bathroom we find him lifeless, having game-ended himself in the bathtub. After walking out of that scene, we hear the broadcast that played in the first game that announces that there is no such thing as Repleh County, and to comply with the CTF. They state that all people should walk out and surrender before the TV turns off. We try to radio dispatch, but there is no response. Seemingly, the dispatcher has been eliminated. We try to walk out, but are met with gunshots with someone outside, and we are quickly forced to hide in the room where the corpse of Jenkins is. We hide there before the door is blown and the camera goes out. The following scene shows a shootout between sheriffs and the CTF, both fighting as a list of names appears. The list seems to be people who have died, as Jenkins is on that list, and we know that he's not really alive currently. We hear some radio talk before it all goes silent, and we return to our character. Somehow, by some miracle, we didn't die, but our body cam seemed to have been destroyed. The objective now is to take action, and there's 2 endings based on the action that you take. The first ending in the first badge is called A Way Out, and it is done by joining Old Man Jenkins in the bathtub, committing self-oof before a quote from President Theodore Roosevelt is shown. The only man who makes no mistakes is the man who never does anything. Determination is the second ending. It is completed by walking out of the house. Walking anywhere beyond the point, we are shot by a sniper, ending us for good. However, the sequence that it shows later, it shows a helicopter, burning cars, which are the same ones that are in the stereotypical obby stage on the highway, and we also see some form of gas be deployed before the game cuts to the title card and ends. Now that we've got the story, let's go over what it means and uncover the story of a stereotypical obby as well as RCA2. So from what we know, that this takes place before, during, and after the original Repleh County archives, as well as it ties back to the stereotypical obby's tapes in Experiment 0 and Hallways. I know I haven't covered a video on them. I was waiting to have the full good ending be released, but we're going to talk about them now in the context of RCA 2. Let's begin with Empyrean, what seems to be the mastermind behind all three games. Based on the Experiment 0 tape, we see that Juxtaposed Technologies was created by Empyrean as a franchise, and we're looking to hire a franchise owner. Based on the fact that we play as said franchise owner in ASO, we know that they found their guy. Moving on from there, we know that the CTF is also owned and operated by Empyrean, owning what seems to be a paramilitary or mercenary group for their own tasks.
Funding will be completely provided by Empyrean and will have the protection of our elite Central Task Force.
With CTF and Juxtaposed both being part of Empyrean, we know that the ones who orchestrated the Axiom headset, but also the extermination of Repleh County, seems to be Empyrean. So why was Empyrean doing this to a small, rural town? Well, that's the thing. Someone on Ignited Softworks Discord mentioned that Juxtaposed Technologies could have been settled in Repleh County. And while there isn't much in-game evidence, I think it makes sense logically. Repleh County, as of now, is the only definitive place that we know of. We don't even know the country's name where Repleh County is. It could be America, it could be some fictional land, it could be Robloxia, we don't really know. What's more is that even when in RCA 1, where you are technically outside of Repleh County, it's always mentioned in the transitions, where the setting is a couple miles out of Repleh County, but it's never really mentioned what county you're actually in or where you are, just how far you are from Repleh. Which makes sense. Given that it's the only setting we have, I'm going to say that this theory, for now, that Juxtaposed Technologies' headquarters is based in Repleh is true, but that still doesn't answer why they were there. Well, this is where we go back to ASO and into the stereotypical Tycoon minigame. We know that in the Tycoon the place is burnt down, but also that it's the place where Monster Helper is kept, a monster that we know escapes by the end as we hear banging on one of the doors, signifying its escape. We could also speculate that the thing that the man sees in RCA 2 could have been Helper, as he mentions that it was a deer person. But his evidence is relatively shaky because in another dialogue option, he states that he couldn't see 10 feet in front of him. The evidence is scarce, but the fact that Old Man Jenkins seems to never leave his house, or at least has extreme paranoia when doing so because he believes he is being monitored, makes me believe that it is unlikely that he would have been the deer person that the man mentioned, and given the time frame, it could have been in line with the idea that by 6 p.m. the Monster Helper had somehow escaped. The fact that it does escape, though, terrifies Empyrean, but because they don't know where it is, they opt to go for the nuclear option and destroy Repleh County, wiping out the county entirely and game-ending every civilian through the use of gas, which is likely what is deployed by the helicopter that we hear in both the tape in ASO and in the end of RCA 2. So the why is to kill Monster Helper, basically. Probably because they are also aware of its power and rage, which makes it a force that poses a major threat to them, but also the ones running the whole operation. They also try to remove Juxtaposed Technology from everything, scrubbing the name and everything it's ever created away. That's why in RCA 2 the camera could have been destroyed, why in RCA 1 the headsets are taken, and why in ASO, stereotypical Tycoon minigame, it's mentioned that we, the player, were not meant to escape. Despite their attempts to end us, we were still kicking around and trying to fix what we started. It also seems that the Jenkins were also somewhat aware of what Empyrean was doing in the town and the sinister truth of Juxtaposed Technologies. It's likely that they actually would have been telling people about it, which is why they must have earned the name of Old Man Jenkins being crazy, or why they're considered to be crazy people in a dialogue that hasn't been released, but in the diner that we mentioned, there was supposed to be a scene where they talk about the Jenkins brothers, where they mention that they are considered to be crazy. The fact of the matter is that they likely weren't. They were actively and openly talking about Empyrean to others. It's just that nobody believed them, which is why everyone believes that they are crazy. However, it seems that Empyrean knew what they were doing and were trying to monitor them. It also explains why Old Man Jenkins is terrified and why Wyatt sounds so blunt, because both believe or perhaps had some knowledge of what was going to eventually happen to Repleh County. So to do a rough timeline here, it seems that RCA 2 happens with the sheriff starting out his day on Highway 951 before being called to go do a welfare check on the Jenkins residence. RCA 1 occurs roughly around the same time as probably the second stop. At some point, the juxtaposed technology building burns down, and because it's a huge fire, the department responds quickly. This, however, catches the eye of Empyrean, who knows what's lurking in that building, quickly attempting to suppress the knowledge of the incident. The CTF likely went to do their job before they are mentioned to be armed fugitives in RCA-1, implying that whatever they did was bloody. Now realizing that word had gotten out about the incident, Empyrean had to act quickly, and they decided to take the nuclear option, wiping everyone out to clear out any loose ties that they could have had. And it also would have made sense that they would have done so at night, where most people would have been asleep in other counties or mainly around the country, making this a very quiet and stealthy operation. At night, they attempted to game end the owner, who somehow survived, but his family did not. They attempted to gaslight everyone outside of Repleh County, and maybe even inside of Repleh County, as Jenkins is in Repleh County, by saying that Repleh County is not real, and for people to comply with the CTF in an effort for news of their doings to not get out and spread. In one night, they had wiped out every sheriff and every citizen in the name of keeping it all secret, as slowly everything started to blow out of proportion and in some manner out of their control. To make sure everyone was dead, they gassed the highways so that if anyone was still alive, they wouldn't be for long. And, just to be safe, they decided to go well beyond the borders of Repleh County to wipe out everyone in the nearby premises, so that way no one would know of what had occurred. They also, in some manner, maybe planned to wipe out the monster helper. Their attempts fail, however, as the player/owner of Juxtaposed Tech survives, likely going back home to find their son long gone, realizing that they have to finish what they started, put on the headset, likely the last one that wasn't repossessed by the CTF, in order to enter the world of ASO, beginning the events of a stereotypical obby. And with that is the story of Repleh County Archives 2, and a general story explained for the general universe of a stereotypical obby. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys do like and subscribe. Go check out my boy James, and I'll see you in the next one. Toodles.